This is Saurabh, and you're listening to my favorite talk show, the Weekly Show with Aditya.
But I was making quite satisfactory progress and was about halfway through the latter when an unforeseen hitch occurred. I bumped into a human body, the last thing I had expected to encounter en route, and for an instant, well, I won't say that everything went black because everything was black already, but I was considerably perturbed. My heart did one of those spectacular leaps Nijinsky used to do in the Russian ballet, and I was conscious of a fervent wish that I could have been elsewhere. Elsewhere, however, being just where I wasn't, I had no option but to grapple with this midnight marauder. And when I did so, I was glad to find that he was apparently one who had stunted his growth by smoking as a boy. There was a shrimp like quality about him which I found most encouraging. It seemed to me that it would be an easy task to throttle him into submission, and I was getting down to it with a hearty good will when my hand touched what were plainly spectacles, and at the moment a stifled "Hey, look out for my glasses" told me my diagnosis had been all wrong. This was no thief in the night, but an old crony with whom in boyhood days I had often shared my last bar of milk chocolate. "Hello, Gussie," I said. "Is that you? I thought you were a burglar." There was a touch of asperity in his voice as he replied, "Well, I wasn't. No, I see that now. Pardonable mistake, though you must admit. You nearly gave me heart failure." I too was somewhat taken aback, no more surprised than the understand when you suddenly popped up. I thought I had a clear track. Where to, need you ask? The steak and kidney pie, if you have left any. Yes, there's quite a bit left. Was it good? Delicious. Then I'll think I'll be getting along. Good night, Gussie. Sorry you were troubled. Continuing on my way, I think I must have lost my bearings a little, shaken no doubt by the recent encounter. These get togethers take their toll. At any rate, to cut a long story, what happened was that as I felt my way along the wall, I collided with what turned out to be a grandfather clock for the existence of which I had not budgeted, and it toppled over with a sound like the delivery of several tons of coal through the roof of a conservatory. Glass crashed, pulleys and things parted from their moorings, and as I stood trying to separate my heart from the front teeth in which it had become entangled, the lights flashed on and I beheld Sir Watkin Bassett. It was a moment fraught with embarrassment. It's bad enough to be caught by your host prowling about his house after hours, even when said host is a warm admirer and close personal friend. And I have, I think, made it clear that Bob Bassett was not one of my fans. He could barely stand the sight of me by daylight, and I suppose I looked even worse to him at 1 o'clock in the morning. My feeling of having been slapped between the eyes with a custard pie was deepened by the spectacle of his dressing gown. He was a small man. You got the impression, seeing him, that when they were making magistrates, there wasn't enough material left over when they came to him. And for some reason not easy to explain, it nearly always happens that the smaller the ex magistrate, the louder the dressing gown. His was a bright purple number with yellow frogs, and I am not deceiving my public when I say that it smote me like a blow, rendering me speechless. Not that I would have felt chatty even if he had been upholstered in something quiet and dark blue. I don't believe you can ever be completely at your ease in the company of someone before whom you have stood in the dock saying, "Yes, your worship," and "No, your worship," and being told by him that you are extremely lucky to get off with a fine and not 14 days without the option. This is particularly so if you have just smashed a grandfather clock whose welfare is no doubt very near his heart. At any rate, be that as it may, he was one to open the conversation, not me. Good God, he said, speaking with every evidence of horror. You thing I never know and probably never will is what to say when somebody says you to me. A mild, "Oh, hello," was the best I could do on this occasion. Felt at the time it wasn't good. Better, of course. Then what ho there, Basse, but nevertheless not good. Might I ask what you're doing at this hour, Mr. Wooster? Well, I might have laughed a jolly laugh and replied, setting grandfather clocks, keeping it light as it were, if you know what I mean. But something told me it wouldn't go so frightfully well. I had what amounted to an inspiration. I came down to get a book. I had finished my Earl Stanley Gardner and I couldn't seem to drop off to sleep. So I came to see if I couldn't pick up something from your shelves. And in the dark I bumped into the clock. Indeed, he said, putting a wealth of sniffiness into the word. A thing about this undersized little son of a bachelor I ought to have mentioned earlier is that during his career on the bench, he was one of those unpleasant, sarcastic magistrates who get themselves so disliked by the criminal classes. With almost everything going online, including classes, exams, meetings of all kinds, be it meetings by the government departments, meeting of various organizations. Well, for that you need to recruit people. And now with this fear of physical contact coming into play, the cowardness that is being shown that we don't want people to be around us, we don't want people to congregate in a location, then even this old fashioned concept of interviews also is shifting online. But if you remember in my previous episodes, I talked about video conferencing etiquettes, and those same etiquettes can be used as far as the concept of giving interviews is concerned. Still, in the 22nd century, the whole idea is that we want to work for someone else. We feel this pride in working for someone else, and therefore giving interviews adds to our experience. While I can understand giving interviews from the point of view of getting a job, what I've never understood is why do educational institutions need to interview students? What are you trying to prove? Who are you trying to eliminate? And how do you know that this student is the creme de la creme that is going to take your institution to the next level, is going to add to the already bloated ego and the popularity that the institution enjoys. Interviews, as we all know, whether it's for getting a job or getting into an educational institution after going through the horrors of multiple entrance exams, or even if the entrance exams are made uniform and they are reduced, still one has to go through all this tedious and nightmarish process. And then what happens when you finally reach that stage, when you knock on the door and when you enter the room where a bench of salt and pepper individuals are waiting for you to interview you. But the irony is that even these salt and pepper individuals who are interviewing you are not doing it independently. They are also bound by the rules of the institutions set by their masters. Means these interviewers whom we think have all the power, well, they have no power because they have a set of category that we have to select this kind of a student or this kind of a candidate, and therefore they ask those questions. The questions are heavily loaded towards certain points and prejudices and biasness. So my suggestion is anybody who goes for an interview, because you have to go, that's the way things work. Don't go with much of an expectations. Just go casually. Enter that room, sit down because they will ask you to sit down. Give them your papers because that's how they judge you. But then that's the way that's been happening over the past 100 years, and that is not going to change. But then there are certain nitty gritties associated with whether you are interviewing for a job or interviewing to get into an institution. While for a job, their focus will be your previous experience, what kind of salary you had, because it's all about competition. If an X organization gave you X amount of money, first question they ask is, why did you leave that organization? That is a question they will always ask. Or why were you working for this organization? What were the experiences you gained? And even if, let's say, you had some experience, they will not take it seriously because for that organization, the organization you left is nothing more than a competitor. So for then you are the golden goose. You are a kind of person who would give other organization inside information, and you have to be careful if in jest you talk about how your boss was, how the CEO was, how they behaved, what were their idiosyncrasies. You have to be very careful in not to reveal that, because it's not whether you're revealing this in jest, because this will be taken as a source of information to be used against the other company, because two companies are never friends, they are always competitors. Whether you leave company X to join company Y and what the interviewers feel, my suggestion is that interviews are a nuisance. They don't help anybody. It's a waste of time. Because, for example, let's say I have completed 244 episodes, and in a hypothetical situation, I was to apply for a radio programmer or a radio anchor into a radio station. Ideally, I should bypass the interview and the written test round, and straight away I should be recruited because I have enough experience of doing this. Yes, there are some guidelines to be followed as per that institution, but should I be bypassed? Of course, I have enough experience. I don't have to go through the entire process of proving myself again, because if 244 episodes for me and then for anybody else doesn't prove that I am in this field, I have the experience, then the institution where I have hypothetically applied, or where any XYZ individual has applied, if they have to go through the interview process again, if we have to show them our CV again, if we have to show them our educational mark sheets again, especially 10th and 12th, which we gave over 15 to 20 years ago, which are no longer valid. Let me tell you, in India, especially, your 10th and 12th mark sheets are only important for you to graduate school. Once you graduate school, your 10th and 12th mark sheet become redundant. They are no longer applicable. They are applicable till the time you apply in a college. Once you are in a college, it doesn't matter whether you got 98%, 58%, 10% marks, 60% marks, they become invalid. Yet, by design or default or under pressure because they are eventually employees of that organization, these interviewers still ask about your 10th and 12th performance. Why did you take these XYZ subjects and why did you not take this subject? The only advantage of an online interview is that you cut down on your travel and accommodation costs, which is good, which is helpful. But if the organization where you are applying and do not change their MO that is making you wait while they organize the interview, then I think it's a waste of time. Why is so much importance given to CVs? I don't understand. CVs are just a piece of paper where we add our experience, but then the irony is that most of the time these organizations and their interviewers don't take that CV seriously. What I have learned in terms of the idea of a CV is that don't fill it with too many educational information. Means if you have attended multiple courses, don't add all of them in the CV. Add only the one which you feel these interviewers will be attentive to. But as I said, interviews are a gray area. Interviews are not to see if you are good enough. Interviews are to see if you are in tune with the ideology of the organization you are being recruited to, whether it's an education institution or whether it's for a job. Your experience, your CV doesn't matter. Once upon a time in the medieval times, I used to be excited about going for interviews because I thought this was a way of me getting the experience to talk to different people. But now I feel interviews are a waste of time. And if hypothetically I have to recruit someone, then I will just recruit them. I won't go into the details whether they have the experience or not, whether they are freshers out of college. I will just recruit them. I think, in my experience, when these very interviewers ask questions, the pressure they are under already by their organizations that they don't think before they speak. And the most strange part is that even if you are a graduate fresh out of college and let's say you have applied for whatever organization you have applied to or whatever specialization you have applied for, the first question they will ask is, and remember, you are not 40 years old, you are just 21 and a half years old, fresh out of college, and yet their ego will force them to ask this question: what is your experience? It's basically because these interviews feel that just because they slogged right from the age of 18 and they had to work hard, they expect everybody at the age of 18 to start working hard and not become spoiled brats by going through a college education. There is something which makes one thing about the interviewers clear. If the interview asks too many questions about what your college was or what your experience was, or if they ask too many questions which are not part of what you are here for, then there is only one word to describe it: they are envious. For example, an individual A adds in their CV that they have learned French or German or Spanish or any other European or foreign language and has added that to their CV, then these interviewers will feel the pang because maybe they don't know the language. The solution is not about showing off or adding experience. Don't add that. Don't add that here. Nobody wants to know. Don't even tell people if you have learned a language. Tell them in casual conversations, but never in a CV. It always backfires. The most irritating part about the interviews is that the interviewers are not prepared. Suppose you have fixed a date and time, and whether it's a physical interview or a virtual interview or a video interview, you reach that place, whether you reach through a link or through transportation, what will happen is they will make you wait. The person at the reception will pretend as if they don't even know you are coming here for an interview. They have no idea. That is how unprepared and unorganized they are. Yes, they have a lot of work to do, but they are unprepared and unorganized. So, how do you answer back? Be as unprepared and as unorganized. We say that smile at the interviews. Yes, smile during the interviews, but keep it rational. Don't overdo it because that adds to the bloated ego and the underconfidence of the interviewers. And after all this experience, what I learned is that interviews are a colossal waste of time. They are just there to add to the bloated ego of the interviewer and just to make the interviewee feel bad that yes, we control you, we can recruit you, we may not recruit you, we have our own guidelines to recruit XYZ person, and if you do not conform to the ideology of our institution, whether it's an educational institution or whether it's an organization where you're going to slog for them 9 to 5, the best thing is just walk out. If you think the video interview is not going well and they are not respecting you for all the experience you have or all the experience you hope to gain by working for somebody else and then leaving and starting your own organization, which is not wrong, which is absolutely correct. All talk about starting our own organization. Yes, it's good, but it's better to do most of the job on your own. The less partners and shareholders you have, the better it is because you will be still under pressure after all that. Suppose, for example, you are applying for an anchor, a news anchor, or an anchor for the radio. They will obviously have to make you sit through an entrance exam because the entrance exam is made to eliminate people. And of course, the next step is to make you go through the audition so that they can see how good your voice is. Even if you were the MC, the moderator in your college, you had invited people and you had asked them questions. You had done a whole radio show in your college. You had anchored an entire television program in your college, a debate or whatever you may call it, a panel discussion, and now you are applying for the same in an actual institution. Those experiences eventually are never given the respect. Because the strange theory is that those experiences are gained in schools and colleges, and by some ideology, you are protected in schools and colleges. So, none of that counts. And yes, if none of that counts and there is no use applying for a job, you may as well start your own organization. If you want to skip these nuisance called interviews, don't apply anywhere. Don't even think about giving an entrance exam when you graduate from college with whatever subjects. And if the subject is such as you have taken a subject such as communication, journalism, radio, television, start your own program. Don't bother whether your program will be given the respect or not because you will do a better job than what most TV channels do because they are under their own pressure because of the guidelines imposed on them. So, in short, don't bother going for an interview. Start your own thing because interviews, despite all the aura around interviews are a massive, colossal waste of time, and interviews is just to add to the ego of interviewers that we control you, we can select you, we cannot select you because of the most idiotic of reasons. Tare Gin Gin याद च तेरी मैं ता जागा रात ਨੂੰ ਰੋਕ ਨਾ ਪਾਵੇ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਗਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਬਰਸਾਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ Tare Gin Gin याद च तेरी मैं ता ਜਾਗਾ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਰੋਕ ਨਾ ਪਾਵੇ ਅੱਖਾਂ ਵਿੱਚੋਂ ਗਮ ਦੀਆਂ ਬਰਸਾਤਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਓ ਹੋ ਓ ਹੋ ਓ ਹੋ ਇਸ਼ਕ ਤੇਰਾ ਤੜ ਪਾਵੇ ਓ ਹੋ ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे खले मैनू तेरे बिन ता हर पल ये तनाई दा दसो मैनू नागन वांगू मौसम तेरी जुदाई दा पल भी मैं भूल न पावा तेरी मिठियां बातां नू पल भी मैं भूल न पावा तेरी मिठियां बातां नू रोक न पावे अखियां विचों गम दिया बट साडा नू ओ हो ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे दिल जला के रोशन किता मैं तो तेरिया रावां नू मैं हले आने तेरे वल सुखमिया ठंडिया सावां नू दिल जला के रोशन किता मैं तो तेरिया रावां नू मैं हले आने तेरे वल सुखमिया ठंडिया सावां नू समझना क्यों तू मेरे प्यार भरे जज्बातां नू समझना क्यों तू मेरे प्यार भरे जज्बातां नू रोक न पावे अखियां विचों गम दिया बट साडा नू ओ ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे सारे तन आके मिल जाए सुन ले सदावा मेरी तू कान न जावे मेरी आजा ना कर देरी तू सारे तन आके मिल जाए सुन ले सदावा मेरी तू कान न जावे मेरी आजा ना कर देरी तू रोक न पावे अखियां विचों गम दिया बट साडा नू ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे रे गिन गिन याद च तेरी मैं ता जागा रातां नू रोक न पावे अखियां विचों गम दिया बट साडा नू ओहो इश्क तेरा तड़पावे 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 This ends episode number 244 on the 7th of August 2020. Stay tuned to this broadcast and this talk show because 2 weeks from tonight we will be celebrating our 250th episode.
For more awesome content, tune in to the next episode of the weekly show with Aditya.